Hello, people of the internet. Ian Alter, the Freedom Astrologer, once again here with another video. And this time I'm going to talk about maybe a little bit lesser known thing, I guess. And I'm going to bring in astrology here. And we're going to talk about Neptune and the pattern, or the kind of pattern, I think is maybe the best word for it. And the pattern of not being seen. So when we dive into astrology, Neptune is a lot to do with, being hidden, being almost this kind of mystical veil pulled over wherever it is in the birth chart. And it is kind of like almost there's an emptying influence always to do with Neptune. We're talking about, let's say, more of the negative side of Neptune right now. Always there's a lot of good things with Neptune, like our artistic expression and intuitive spiritual gifts and healing abilities. There's a lot of that with Neptune, obviously. But the other side of Neptune is kind of like the being addicted to substances and going towards maybe criminal activities behind the scenes a lot of the times that are maybe not the best. Depends on your perspective, but might not be the best to do in human society. This is kind of like the negative. And I mentioned the emptying and the hidden and kind of not being seen as well, because Neptune does hide and it does kind of empty the places where it's at in the birth chart. So, and we're going to talk about, I'm going to just show you Neptune as well on this example. Neptune is this little guy who don't know. And in this example, I brought up two examples to illustrate it. Both are to do with the parental axis. The parental axis for me is mostly the 4th and the 10th house. So this axis right here, the angles. And also, when we talk about the father, I usually always check the 9th house as well, because 9th house in Vedic astrology is the father, and I've seen it be very, very much connected to the father figure, mentor figure in a person's life. So, but mostly in this video, we're going to focus on the 4th and 10th house, or the parental axis. Now, in this case, we have Neptune in the 4th house here. And in this second example, we have Neptune in the 10th house. But most prominent with the topic I'm about to dissect here is Neptune in the 4th. And one of the reasons why is because although the 4th house is one of the parents, usually the mother, very often the father as well. But it's also the environment you were brought up in, the early childhood environment, and the entire like family environment as well. So wherever there's influence there, it does speak to the entire kind of family environment, and at the very least one of the parents. So because the gender roles in modern society are quite mixed, so we always, like as astrologers, I think in this modern society, in modern time, we need to look at, or we need to maybe even ask the person we're doing a reading or some sort of webinar, whatever it is. In your case, whenever you see some influence in the 10th or 4th, usually we need to ask before we firmly say it's the mother, it's the father. Most often I've seen the dominant parent, whoever is the more dominant parent in the child's or person's life, is the 10th house, and who is maybe more a little bit, the nurturer a bit, is the 4th house. So this is the best that I've seen where we can differentiate a little bit. But even very often the gender roles are still mixed. So the father can be the nurturer, then the mother can be the more dominant, even if the father is maybe even more, doing more in the material world. Still, in the family unit, or in the early childhood environment, let's say, the mother is still more kind of like a domineering person, and the father maybe the one who's giving the nurturing there. Now, and why do I bring in Neptune and not being seen? Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Neptune does hide. Neptune kind of empties. Neptune brings in this kind of these addictions at times, especially if the aspects aren't that good. And we're putting the Neptune. Remember, we're putting the Neptune in the 4th house. The 4th house, like I mentioned, is the family, is one of the parents. So when you put that negative, remember the negative side of Neptune with the family unit, with the one of the parents, this can mean very often a couple of things. Now, it's not always just only Neptune, but Neptune in the 4th or 10th is one of the most, let's say, sure or the most prominent positions where I've seen this pattern be very, very prevalent in a person's life. And mostly I say again, manifests in 2 different ways. So the first one is maybe more self-evident, and the second one is a more deeper one and a more difficult one to dissect, and I will speak briefly about both of these patterns. Now, the first one is with the Neptune in the 4th or the 10th house, that one of the parents is absent. Now, absence can look like, in many ways, and you need to put other aspects, other things in the chart with it. But even with alone Neptune in the 10th or 4th, it's very, very often the case that one of the parents is either kind of missing from the person's life or not there, and so they don't get the closeness, the emotional needs met from that person, that parent. And so this can manifest again in a lot of ways, but one of the ways is that the person does feel not seen by that specific person. Now, it can be again mother or father, but the problem is whatever the person needs from that specific parent is missing. Now, when it's the father, it's very often because one of the jobs or kind of like the duties of the father is to kind of, in my mind, and I've seen this in a lot of, let's say, situations, family dynamics. This is one of the jobs of the father is to kind of see the gifts of the child and kind of insert that confidence within that child specifically. And if that's not there, that person can feel really unseen. Now, it doesn't mean always that it needs to be the father, because, now we get to the kind of like the deeper side of the things. Now, when we're children, there's a lot of creativity, flowing through us, and a lot of those kind of more open, in tune, creative centers are more open. There's not much, done to us yet to close these, centers and energy centers. And, we see things, we do things in our mind that are creative. We think things that are very creative in our minds. And as we're children, there's no filter. So we bring those creative things. Maybe we see, even, from a spiritual perspective, the ability to see entities, the ability to see energies. If the child is very in tune, very sensitive, is there, and they feel things, and as children, we're more like sponges. Obviously, it can, carry over in adulthood, but also very often in childhood, like the there's almost no filters there. So the sensitivity, the kind of seeing, the creativity, it's flowing, and there's a lot of it. Now, what happens very often is a child brings something very unique, something very creative, something maybe that's not understood by the parents. Maybe it's not even understood by the time. Maybe it's something that seems at times, crazy or weird or strange to the parents or whoever is kind of on the receiving end. Now, if the child brings that, they usually need to be seen for whatever it is that they're bringing is there. They're kind of looking for that acceptance from the parents, from the caregivers, from the primary caregivers. And if that acceptance is not there, which again, with that Neptune in the 4th house, very often is not there. It's again like one of the parents is not there, or the parents don't understand, or the parents, even if I've seen even this pattern with very kind of like happy households, it's seemingly happy households, and Neptune is in the 4th house, and the person inside feels like they're not seen. And this is what very often happens when those creativity juices flow, and the child brings those seemingly crazy ideas, or says that they're seeing something there, brings them to the table, brings them to the surface, brings them to the parents, and then the child gets shut down, said something along the lines of, no, there's nothing there, you're talking crazy, whatever it is that the parent might say to kind of shut them down from bringing that creativity or kind of weirdness, uniqueness to the surface, to be accepted, to be received by the parents, to be kind of at the very least explored by the parents, and very often I've seen this also when a parent doesn't kind of recognize, doesn't realize the uniqueness, doesn't realize the specialness, the sensitivity of the child, and again plays it down like, oh, you're not really feeling that, you're just imagining that. That's a big one. You're just imagining that. Actually, the child might be really seeing, experiencing something. They're having sensations, feelings, intuitions in their body. But when a parent is already shut down from that, they can't receive. They don't know how to receive it. Our modern society usually suppresses those sensations, suppresses those feelings, intuitions, ideas, and then the parent shuts themselves down. And now when the parent is shut down, it's very hard for them to kind of accept the child, because they're kind of speaking the language of general society, because it's scary to kind of beat your own drum and make your own understandings and knowings, and now the child comes in, clean slate, brings that uniqueness, brings that creativity into the picture, brings that sensitivity, maybe spiritual gifts to the table, and the parent shuts them down. So this is the place where the child's psyche, child's emotional kind of capacity is not there to process that rejection, or process that kind of not being met, not being seen by the parents. And now they can, do a lot of things. This can manifest in a lot of ways. But one of the main ways I've seen this manifest is the person deep down, from a very subconscious thing, even, it can't be even aware of it sometimes, is that they really yearn and desire to be seen by the families, seen by the parents. They feel almost invisible. They feel like nobody can acknowledge and nobody can see them for who they are, to see them fully in their uniqueness, to see them fully in their gifts, to really see them fully in their sensitivity. And then all sorts of weird things can happen. Also, the person can shut those gifts down, shut those sensitivities down, and that can snowball into, depression, drugs. Again, like I mentioned with Neptune, this can very much bring that. And there are a lot of ways for a person to step out of it, start stepping out of it. And one of the first things, the person needs to become aware that they are still kind of struggling with it, and desiring, yearning for that from the outside or from the parents. It can, again, in adult life, it can carry over to the bosses, the job, the career, whatever it is outside, and then can feel invisible, not seen in those spaces as well. So the first thing is to become aware of it and let that sadness and kind of grief, because there's usually a lot of grief there, to come up to the surface, to be cleansed, to be felt, to be processed. And when that's, it's not, obviously, what I'm speaking about is not an easy task to do, and it's not the most simple thing to do. But it takes time, it takes practice, it takes the allowing of being sad about not being seen. It just takes a little while to allow those feelings of grief and sadness to come up and to process. There's crying, and there's releasing and letting go. And then hopefully, once that process is done, first and foremost, the acceptance can come towards the parents, to see them, like I said, being shy, being scared, being in fear, not being able to process whatever it is you were bringing, not being present enough at times, because Neptune, again, substance, alcohol, alcoholism can come into the picture with Neptune in the 4th, for sure, in the family unit, in early childhood environment. And that's that's one of them, unfortunate things with this. And so again, that sadness, to see them as they truly are, and to forgive them, to allow yourself to first, even anger can come, to process that anger because they weren't there, to process those feelings that they weren't there, to process that grief, anger, that they couldn't accept and see you for who you are. And next step is to start accepting that and seeing yourself and seeing your gifts, seeing your uniqueness. I've always noticed this, and in my own experience, I had to also do this with, like, at the same time with having some strong, good teachers, mentors, beside me, who kind of helped me see, the things that I couldn't see about myself. And but it's also very important for the person to start kind of reaffirming, like, seeing that uniqueness and being okay with it, because at times, the human psyche, or the young person's psyche, can suppress even that. And you need to, it kind of feels weird to start seeing, oh okay, I can do this. Oh, I'm pretty creative. I can see weird things. I can see these kind of different things about this life of ours, and this society and people of ours. And maybe it's not so bad. And it, gradually kind of see, oh, maybe it's even pretty good, and maybe I can use this even here. And gradually, with help of mentors at first, and then kind of seeing it yourself, bringing it, kind of building those steps and building those blocks, to kind of give yourself that thing you were lacking, that thing you were missing. And in a lot of ways, after you start to do that, other people start to come in and be able to see that as well. I'm not saying it will be all of them, but at least some of them will be able to see your gifts, your uniqueness as well. But the most important thing is that you do this yourself, and you start letting go of that grief and anger and pissed offness that is directed usually towards the parents. And sometimes it's even subconscious, and it's kind of important to come out, or to realize this, and then start to release it. So this is it. Neptune in the 4th, more prominent. Neptune in the 10th can again give that indication of not being seen by one of the parents. But in my experience, then it's more to do with whoever is the more dominant parent. And so it's usually the kind of the wound is more associated with him. And I did another one of these with the Neptune and hard aspect to Sun. And I think I mentioned Neptune in the 10th as well in one of my other videos on this channel. So go and check that out if you have Sun square or opposite Neptune as well. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. If you want to go deeper with these topics, I did a webinar a while back. It's recorded. It's almost 7 hours long, a webinar with 2 ebooks, and you can purchase this in the link below. I really recommend you check this out. It's a really good webinar I did, and see you soon in the next videos on Ian Althusser, the Freedom Astrology channel. And thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Subscribe, like, share, and let me know in the comments, does it relate to you? Do you feel like it's something it happened to you? If you have Neptune in the 4th, maybe you have Neptune in the 10th. Yeah, see you soon.